From Thom Hartmann's Daily Take Substack. The power to destroy isn't hypothetical, it's the state's ultimate weapon. Why authoritarian language always precedes authoritarian rule. Published September 15th, 2025. The following is a song inspired by this article.
You wave the flag, you love the dream, but freedom crashed along the seam. It's not just talk when power speaks. Democracy dies in whispered leaks. Words matter when the state takes aim. Words matter, they can burn your name from the prison walls to the exile ships. It all begins on a leader's lips. Fox can scream and pundits rage, but only government locks the cage. When leaders call their people traitors, it's not debate, it's the end of the acres. Words matter when the state takes aim. Words matter, they can burn your name from the prison walls to the exile ships. It all begins on a leader's lips. From Lincoln's call to Trump's fire, we walk the edge of a funeral pyre. History warns, the script's the same. Tyrants rise on poison names. Words matter, they can free or bind. Words matter, they can steal your mind. When power speaks, beware the sound. It's freedom lost, it's chains unbound.
Every president and most members of Congress have known for the past 2 centuries that having the ability to wield the power of government is a serious responsibility that carries with it real obligations for self-control. The reason is simple and obvious, although our media appears not to realize it when they act like Trump's and Miller's rhetoric is normal. Government can legally kill you, imprison you, and take everything you own. Fox, quote, News, end quote, and other commentators can't. When some bigot on Fox or another right-wing outlet goes off on how Democrats are left-wing extremists, terrorists, or traitors, he doesn't have the ability or power to do anything about it. They're just words, which is why they're protected by the First Amendment. Inflammatory words, certainly, but just words. But when a government official slaps one of these kinds of labels on you because of things you've said or political views you hold, you can literally lose everything. Just ask Mahmoud Khalil or Ramesh Ozturk, who were imprisoned for expressing their opinions on the genocide Netanyahu is carrying out in Israel, or Kilmar Albrego Garcia, who had the bad fortune of being brown-skinned when Stephen Miller was on one of his racist Jeremiads, even though he had legal permission to stay in the United States. This is why, even after 9/11, George W. Bush measured his words, going so far as to emphasize that Islam wasn't our enemy. So did Abraham Lincoln, for that matter, even as the country he led was under attack by actual traitors committed to ending democracy in America. In his second inaugural address, with the echo of the Civil War, he said, quote, "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in to bind up the nation's wounds," end quote. Utah's Republican Governor Spencer Cox understood that, as a government official with the power to kill by firing squad or imprisonment, it was his obligation to turn down the heat. Quote, "We can return violence with violence. We can return hate with hate. That's the problem with political violence. It metastasizes," end quote. Cox told The Nation when Robinson was arrested. "We can always point the finger at the other side. At some point, we have to find an off-ramp, or else it's going to get much worse," end quote. Trump, Miller, and the GOP, more generally, hasn't gotten the message. Trump blamed the, quote, radical left, end quote, as if there is actually any meaningful number of people in America calling for communism, for the killing, and then on Thursday told reporters, quote, "We just have to beat the hell out of radical left lunatics," end quote. When Matthew Dowd notes on MSNBC that Kirk engaged in hate speech, the worst that happens is the network fires him. Ditto for Fox's Brian Kilmeade when he called for America to emulate Hitler's Action T4 program, where physicians killed homeless and disabled people by lethal injection, later on and moving on to mobile vans that used their exhaust to kill. The worst Kilmeade can expect is to be fired, although given how shamefully unprincipled Fox management is, that's probably unlikely. But when government officials describe people using language that could lead to any of us being investigated, arrested, or even imprisoned or deported because of our politics, it's an entirely different thing. It's a genuine threat to our system of government, our rule of law, and to the safety and security of all of the American people. Because when they start hauling away Americans for their opinions, when they threaten or pull our citizenship or passports, as Trump and other Republicans have recently done, history tells us it's not a long trek to using those same tactics against people who thought they were on the, quote, right side, end quote. Indeed, it's already started to happen. Just ask Republicans James Comey, John Brennan and James Clapper, who are now all facing criminal investigations for speaking out against Trump. All these lifelong Republicans had to lawyer up after Trump publicly called them, quote, criminals, end quote. When Stephen Miller, who the White House wants you to know definitely does not play with porcelain and dolls, says the Democratic Party, which he can't bring himself to say, but instead uses Joe McCarthy's, quote, Democrat Party, end quote, slur, quote, is not a political party. It's a domestic extremist organization, end quote. He's laying the legal foundation for criminal investigations and arrests per the Patriot Act. When he vows to, quote, dismantle and take on the radical left organizations in this country that are fomenting violence, end quote, promising under Trump's leadership to use law enforcement to, quote, strip them of money, power, and freedom, end quote, and threatening that members of the left who, quote, spread evil hate, end quote, will, quote, live in exile, end quote, he's not just a commentator. He's a man who wields actual power over life and death, imprisonment, or freedom. This rhetoric is particularly troubling since all the previous 31 politically motivated violent attacks in America have been committed by right-wingers. Or consider Elon Musk, the world's richest man who created and ran the Doge program to dismantle our government. He was in England this weekend and said, quote, the violence is going to come to you. You will have no choice. You're in a fundamental situation where you are, where whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. That's the truth, end quote. And he wasn't talking about Osama bin Laden or anybody like that. He was talking about people like you and me. Quote, you see how much violence there is on the left with our friend Charlie Kirk getting murdered in cold blood this week and people on the left celebrating it openly. The left is a party of murder and celebrating murder. I mean, let that sink in for a moment. That's who we're dealing with here. That is who we're dealing with, end quote. When Trump was asked how to heal the country and says, quote, I couldn't care less, end quote, and then adds that the radicals on the left are the problem, end quote. He's inciting stochastic lone wolf terrorism against Democrats and setting up rationalizations for government actions like Hitler's Reichstag-fire decree that ended all free speech protections in Germany in 1933. And now, a member of Congress has introduced legislation to strip the passports of anybody who, quote, supports terrorism, end quote. The bill's author is a former soldier in the Israeli military. You know what direction this is going. A few rational people still left in the GOP need to reach out to this administration and convince them to follow the example of every other president since Andrew Jackson to dial back the rhetoric, acknowledge the fundamental humanity of Democrats and others on the, quote, left, end quote, and their absolute right to advocate for their own different vision of a better America with fewer guns, more unions, and free health care, and free college. The actual, quote, radical left, end quote, positions. Because when a government points its finger at you, when it decides you are the enemy, the entire machinery of the state lines up behind that accusation. That's not hyperbole. It's the lesson of history written in blood and exile and mass graves. Every authoritarian regime begins not with tanks on the street, but with leaders who use words like weapons and convince their followers that fellow citizens were traitors. Every one. Trump and his enablers are replaying that script right here, right now. The only question left is whether we'll recognize it for what it is and slam on the brakes, or whether we'll watch, paralyzed as the state's power to cage, exile, or kill is once again turned inward, but this time against us all.